here. Don't worry if you are coming on live, your face and name will not be shown on our streaming.
And
So
Eric,
yeah,
I wanted to let you know that I am the liaison. I have a question from Joanne Braithwaite, who has trouble
don't worry if you are
joining
coming
us,
on live, your
but I
your face. Go ahead, sorry.
but I can't put it in the Q&A
Okay,
myself. I don't think so. I
okay.
just want to give you that heads up.
Send me a text or a chat, or that'd be fine. Or you can just simply uh do that, read that question yourself. Okay, so let me get this going here. Thank you for being here. So let me hit record, and this might turn into a podcast. I know we haven't aired the last two Q&As. Just it's been a time bandwidth issue because the live Q&As just take more editing time. Okay, so let's get started here in three, two, and one. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We are here for our live monthly Q&A. It is June 11th, and I'm joined today with Coach Kristen Martz. We have our other coach, Coach Brian Antler, is out. He just got back from the Life Cycle. It's a Life Cycle ride that raises money for LGBTQ healthcare. He did 525-mile bike ride, which is a bucket list goal that he's now completed for the third time, and it was a goal he set when he was actually a member of our coaching program. So, um, kudos to Brian, and hello to Kristen. How you doing?
I'm all right. I did not bike that many miles, nor did I bike a single mile last week. So, yeah, I'm not sore or anything.
Maybe it was because you're like a bicycle, too tired.
Yeah, okay, I'll take it. That's all right.
All right, we got a question right off the bat here from Megan. So Megan is going to ask her question live here. So I'm just getting her to unmute.
Hi,
Hey Megan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Um, so I have a question that's or I guess some advice, I guess. So I've been dealing with just this huge disorganized mess in my home. We moved here about a year ago, and I live with my elderly parents and my brother, who's pretty much the same age as me, who also has ADHD. And then my son, who's 10, who also has ADHD. And I'm pretty sure my mom has it too. So, uh, yeah. So I'm the only one who's really trying to put the house together. But I don't know where to start because what happened was nothing had a place to go. So now it's just stuff is just everywhere. So what's the first step I can take to fix this?
Sure, the definitely a relatable challenge. I know that with Kristen and myself often struggle with the clutter. Yep. And I love that, Kristen. Thank you for sharing very vulnerably and openly, and you're making everyone who's viewing this feel probably right at home. So thank you, Kristen. All right. So what I do, well, it's definitely more than one strategy. The first thing I do is I go around and try to find everything that can just be thrown away, like the wrappers, the receipts, the bags, the thing that I don't know what the thing is for, that I might, that I magically hope will make sense to me at a future point in time, right? Like I'll go through those things and try to get rid of those things.
Okay, the easy stuff.
Yeah. The next thing I do, I look for big things. Like if there's things that are actually large in size, because then that, is sort of the easiest way to make space is find large things. Um, I think one of the things that is a tendency for us ADHDers is we do kind of we clean our house sort of like a ping pong ball. We bounce
Hmm.
from thing to thing to thing to thing, which often leaves us going from room to room to room to room, which will result in us, putting stuff away, decluttering, and then at the end of our exhausted period of time of doing this, we look around and say, "What did I even do? Nothing looks any better because we
Yeah.
are bouncing from room to room to room." Right? So, is that something that is a struggle for you, like going from room to room?
Yes, absolutely. And then I get confused and I forget what I'm doing and then I just give up. Yeah.
Okay. So a strategy that I learned from a couple professional organizers is to get some either boxes or baskets and label those baskets or boxes with the room that the item needs to go to, but don't leave the room that you're currently in.
Okay.
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 So as you're going through the stuff, you put each thing in its respective basket. And then once you're done with that space, then you take, the respective basket and bring it to that room and then do the same thing on repeat. I would also encourage you to do some body doubling if you've never done that before, where you get to clean with other people. And we do have our co-working sessions in our adult study hall community we have a clean with me session that I encourage you to check out if you haven't seen that.
Sure.
And, and drawers and shelves are all like important. What would you say is like the biggest source of clutter in your home?
Um, Probably, to be honest, there's clutter everywhere. Yeah, there's clutter in my room, clutter in the living room, kitchen, and then we just got more stuff from storage. So now the backyard is just full of stuff.
Okay.
More clutter. So I need to figure out where I'm going to put all this stuff
Well,
or how to get rid of it.
okay. Um, ha, a strategy if you have a lot of stuff, one of the strategies I've liked using it and I've done in the past is engineering urgency by finding a local charity that will do donation pickups before you even start decluttering anything.
Okay.
Schedule the pickup.
Okay.
How you've engineered urgency and you have an actual like date and time that an organization is going to come to your place to pick stuff up. So now it's not just whenever I feel like it, I'll get to it. It's
Yeah.
the other strategy is and I think the primary reason that introverts like myself invite people over to their house is engineered urgency to clean stuff up.
Yeah. Right.
So those are a couple strategies. Kristen, I know you've got some stuff that you worked for you as well. So what works for you?
Yeah, so I agree with you on the trash first. Definitely. Um, I agree with you about the engineered urgency. However, there's a little caveat to that because
Oop, we're having a little
Oops.
connection.
I am master at camouflage and put a
Hey, Kristen,
beautiful blanket.
real
Sorry,
quick, stop your video so you can answer the question because your audio is getting choppy.
dang it. Okay, what about now?
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so I agree with you about the trash, doing that first. And then, yes, about engineering that urgency by inviting people over. However, there's a caveat to that. I am like a grandmaster of camouflage and we'll take beautiful sheets or blankets and, squish the pile together and then cover it up and it's really pretty. So, not really cleaned up or, shoving it under the bed, into closets, things like that. So, that is not really, that's a band aid, right?
Yeah.
Um, so a couple things I would add. I totally agree with the threshold thing. I think that's really helpful. One of the things I've been doing is, I listen to these a couple of ladies, Cass, I don't know how to say her last name. She was a guest on Eric's podcast, and Dana K. White, who I want to be a guest on Eric's podcast, but they both have a lot of wonderful tips that have really kind of touched my ADHD brain. And uh I don't know where I was going with that, but yes, the container. So Dana K. White, she has this whole idea about it being a container. So I'm getting to the core of you talking about I don't have homes for anything. So the idea of homes is a process. In fact, before I discovered them, I was using the whole language of, yeah, well, they're over in the dormitory. Those things are, and this thing is in the mobile home because I got to move it I'm just trying to gather all the like things and then move them to a home in a neighborhood. And some things were neighborhoods and needed detailed homes. I mean,
Yeah.
I was having a lot of fun with the reframe, and it made it less daunting to do it. It made it more fun to be in the process. And so that is something that I encourage you to do is have fun with reframing, because overwhelm will just shut you down so big time.
Yeah.
One of the things about homes, though, is you mentioned all these new people coming to live together in one home. I don't even know where I learned this. Maybe it's because I have a daughter with autism. Um, Labeling things, and like you can open your kitchen cabinets and you can put the post-it note inside the cabinet so that you start reminding everybody else. If you determine this is the plates shelf and above it is the glasses shelf, you put the post-it notes, you put the labels on the inside and get everybody to fall in line. Because if you're the only one who knows the address to the home, nobody's gonna, it's never gonna work. You're gonna have, people out all the time, couch
And
hopping,
then I
whatever
get
you're gonna
mad at
call it.
them for putting it in the wrong place.
Right, but they don't
Yeah.
know where that place is, and they're
Yeah.
going to forget. And you're going to
Right.
forget. The
Yeah.
other thing about it, I had a hook on my garage door. We moved in here probably 20 years ago. I never noticed that hook on the door until I took Eric's course to put my keys. And I have lost my keys everywhere you can think of, including my outside garbage can. And my husband just thought to go look there.
Oh,
And I
man.
was like, I've never used the hook that was already on the door of the garage inside, where the kitchen is. Never thought of using that. So thinking about getting input from others or going to where you would naturally put things is going to be most helpful. Don't go to where you think, oh, an organizer would tell me to put my purse by the front door. That may not be where you look every day for your purse. So one day when you go looking for your purse, walk to it. And if it's not there, put a post-it note down, write a note to yourself. Hey, I keep going to the head of the household chair at the dining table for some reason to look for my purse. Maybe I should make it a home there and get used to the habit of having a home before you go moving it to something that is a little, maybe that's not the ideal place, but it's the place where your brain tells you to go. Because our brains are wired differently and they are making us crazy because we keep trying to force them into the what neurotypicals would do with this. And we need to make it our own.
Kristen, I love the idea of labeling things inside the your cabinets. About 5 years ago, when I was still married, my now ex at the time, she primarily did the laundry, and she didn't understand the way that I had things put in my dresser drawers, so she took it upon herself to rearrange where stuff is in my dresser drawers, and
Oh no.
my brain did not like that at all. Like I may have had a full-on like meltdown tantrum because of it.
Because
So
you didn't even know where to look. You
that's
were
right.
making the world, you were bending the world to your need, and somebody went in there and said, well, that doesn't make sense to me.
So
But it didn't need to make sense to them.
right. So she tried to respond to that. So she put sticky notes on my dressers to label each thing. So this was 5 years ago. Those sticky notes are still on my dresser, and I still depend on them because otherwise, like, I wouldn't know what's in any of the drawers.
So you went ahead and shifted. And you were okay with shifting though, because I love this story. One I wanted to share with Megan is think about your kiddo with ADHD. It's the community stuff that you're going to have to dictate and put the post-it notes. So Eric is still following what his ex-wife had done for him, and he's still using the sticky notes to do it, and that's okay too. You want to have the individuals manage their own things, but you've got to also encourage them. If it's a shared process like the laundry, do the laundry, put it in the hamper in the door and say, put it away. If you're not going to share with me your home and your rooms for all these things, then you have to do it. But the shared things are the things you really, I know, want to get the people on board with you about, and maybe get their input, give them some ownership to this.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that helpful for you, Megan?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for those tips.
Yeah. And those post-it notes, like he said, are still there. If it's something on the outside, use post-it notes at first until it's settled where it goes. And people still may not remember. You may have to get some really cute kind of labels and stuff that kind of match your decor. And that's okay too. People can live like that. I mean, I did with a daughter with autism for years.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
I know in at some point in the future, when I eventually have the money to redo my kitchen because it's very outdated and cabinets are kind of falling apart a little bit. I'm gonna get the cabinets that have like the see-through the glass doors, because I swear, like I'm the one that put all the dishes where I want them. I still can't remember where they are. Like I'll open every cabinet, like where do I keep the plates? And it's humorous to me, but it's also like also a little annoying. It's like, oh my gosh, like where, oh, the plates have always been here. So you know, whether you can make it visual by actual construction changes, or the cheaper version, which may not be as aesthetically pleasing, but with those sticky notes. So
Yeah.
I hope that that is helpful for you.
Yeah,
Um,
I just put in the chat too when you said not aesthetically pleasing. My husband had gotten me those during my session. He saw I was using Stick It Note and he found those on Amazon. Everybody listen, because these are awesome if you've never heard of them. And they're like the reusable sticky. You know, you can pull it off and on, and they have different sizes and they can be colors, and they're whiteboard. And so that's awesome.
are you talking about the magnetic ones?
There's magnetic ones, but they're also sticky ones. I stick them on places all over the house, like, you know, wherever that point of performance is for things.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I have the like 2 or 3 inches by 3 inches, the dry erase sort of little squares.
Mm-hmm.
That as well in different places.
I have a magnetic one that has a clip to it too. Like you can hang a note and then write your note on the whiteboard part of the clip that tells you what to do with the thing. There's so many things out there like this.
Awesome. All right, let's go to another question here. This one's from Malik, and I'm not sure, Malik, if you are open to going live, but let me read your question, and then you can throw in the chat if you want to go live, and I can pull you up if you're able to. So Malik asks, knowing that each case is different, any ideas/tips/insights on how to limit the secondary issues of ADHD? For example, ADHD may lead to anxiety and or depression, which then compounds the issue, makes treatment all the more difficult. Well, I think that the what the research says is that when anxiety and depression is mild to moderate, you want to be focusing on the ADHD symptoms. When the anxiety and depression is more in the clinically severe range, focusing on that first. Um, with all of these things, though, things like, good self-care, and what does that mean? It's the getting enough sleep, eating well, drinking enough water, remembering to take your medication if you are prescribed medication, exercise, planning. Planning is not everyone realizes this, but I look at planning as a real component of self-care, because it really allows us to structure the rest of our days and really identify our priorities, so we're not always feeling so overwhelmed, and just responding to every little fire that comes up and then wondering what the hell we got done during the day, right? um and secondary issues around ADHD is also super common. So it's also like identifying patterns, and so for a lot of people, maybe it's a seasonal depression where, maybe around the winter time. And so identifying things that way, I know that definitely affects me. So I always try to increase my exercise intensity during that time. That tends to help. Um, and yeah, and making sure you're talking to a doctor and or a therapist, and having these all the kind of the issues addressed um as a whole. I know it's like we really sometimes try to like compartmentalize everything and say, let me treat with the depression, let me treat with the anxiety, let me treat the ADHD. Like, but we are one person, and I think it's important that we are looking at this systemically as a whole, and how we are sort of managing ourselves in that. The other piece that I always encourage, linking up to your community. So whether that's different spaces online, our coaching groups, our study hall programs, whatever I think connects us to others who get it, where we don't have to feel like we're hiding and masking. 'Cause I tell you, hiding and masking can do real harm to our mental health. It really, truly does. Krista, what about you? What do you think here?
Um, where you said planning, the thing that came to me immediately was assess, assess, assess. Constantly assessing and I don't mean that in a way of, oh my gosh, you're telling me to sit down and write something out every, hour. Assessing, taking pause throughout your day, to say, how do I feel? And giving yourself that baseline first thing in the day. And if you miss it, you miss it. That's okay. So the first time you assess, do a scale 0 to 10 if you want to, however you want to do that, and noticing the changes. It's okay if you wake up and you're in a bad mood. Okay, you're going to be in a bad mood. So you're going to try to manage that. However, if you're having an okay day and all of a sudden something happens and you go into total confusion and your ADHD skills aren't there, or you didn't grab onto them and try to use them, you look at yourself in another hour, it might even be withdrawal you're feeling. And then you get to reflect back and go, what's going on here? Is it like a depression, or is it an anxiety? Oh, wait, I didn't do the thing. I just didn't remember the new thing I've been doing to help manage my confusion when that happens. So yeah, you could put a couple bullet point notes about it, saying, I just got triggered by this, how I reacted. I think that is kind of what you're looking for with this question, because it's going to be so customized to each person in how
Kristen, I'm going to stop your video again, 'cause
figure out if it is a slide down because of something with ADHD.
Hey, Kristen,
Oh, thanks.
the last thing.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's going to be the thing that helps a person the most, is to know, is this really depression, or did I slide downhill a little bit because of something that triggered my ADHD? I mean, I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression for years and years and years. And I truly believe it was because it was never noticed that I had ADHD. So what was I doing? I wasn't managing ADHD. I was, while I was in the arts world and field, and didn't have all this depression and anxiety. I got the depression and anxiety when I started going into the clinical world, and 8 to 5, or 7 in the morning to 7 at night sometimes, and not knowing all these new challenges for myself, and then not knowing how to utilize them for a neurodivergent brain. So my depression and anxiety got worse, but nothing got better until it was like, oh wait, you have ADHD. Now go learn about it. And that's when things got better. So, but I still have chronic depression. We have clinical depression in my family. That's genetic. So I still have to be aware of that I can wake up and be in a bad mood because my hormones might be off.
Yeah. And, I too, I struggle with anxiety and depression, and it fluctuates, lots of different factors that sort of cause it to fluctuate. But I tell you, it's like, just because I know the skills and I help people learn the planning strategies, doesn't make me not have ADHD. So like, I know for myself that when my planning starts to slip, which it does, it occasionally will slip, and I haven't looked at my planning stuff in, a bit, like my anxiety will go way up, right? And that is one of the things I've learned. It's like when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, like diving into the planning, also closing open loops. So open loops are those like tasks and projects we've started, but we've maybe like put them to the side because other things came up. Because one of the things I have found is the more open loops that I have, the more anxious I tend to feel. And so I have definitely found that by like really trying to be very deliberate on closing loops before starting new things has really helped a lot with anxiety. Kristen?
Yeah, in reference to what you just shared, developing a self-awareness around it may not be the closing loops thing for you. It could be the arriving late all the time. I've gotten to where it's supposed to be funny in my house that, oh, we can't start till Kristen's here. And, for a while there, it made me mad. For a long time, it was funny. Then it made me mad because I realized it was ADHD. And then I go back and forth with it. But most of the time, I just embraced it and would look at them and go, what's the hurry? It's a family gathering. Big deal. Go ahead and start eating. I don't care if I'm there. So I started embracing that. So the late wasn't what's kept me with the anxiety or the depression or the feeling of, not being accepted or self-worth. You've got to figure it out. You've got to first assess what is it that puts you in those states. So just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. For Eric, it's closing loops. I have 50 million unclosed things around here, and I probably couldn't care less some days. So that's not always going to be the thing that gets me. Mine's more about the late because it's just a big issue.
Well, and to kind of broaden that as well, it's just like learning to be a detective of like how you are interacting with your environment and what are the different sort of things that make you feel, certain ways. Like I know for me, if I, so I, one of my favorite parts of the day is that first sip of coffee in the morning. I'm a coffee drinker, but I drink 1 cup a day. Because when I drink more than that, I'll start sweating, and if I don't exercise, 'cause occasionally I'll have like a chai tea in like the late morning. But what I've learned, if I don't exercise and I have a second caffeinated beverage in the day, my anxiety just shoots through the roof. What was the issue? I just have too much of a central nervous system stimulant in my body. That's it. That's it. Right. So can I have caffeine? Yes. Can I have extra caffeine? Only if I've exercised. So it's really learning how to be that detective of how we are engaging in our environment and seeing what impacts what. It's the more we sort of learn to get curious about and to, I think what happens is we get anxious or we feel depressed and we just like want to push it away. And often that's like the worst thing to do because it just tends to stick around then. But when we get curious and kind of lean into it, even though it can be uncomfortable, right? That's where I think the answers really are found and where the solutions are found is by staying curious and kind of leaning in to those kind of situations. All right, let's do one more question before we take a break here. Okay. We got Hannah with a question. Um, Hannah says, I struggle with task initiation a lot. You and me both. Once I start, it's usually okay for me to continue or at least break the task down to make it more manageable or use other strategies to help me. But I tend to get stuck and not even consider the different options of what I can do. It's like I need it's like I need I need to first push to gather the energy to start doing anything. And as long as I don't pause, it's fine. But then I'm exhausted at the end of the day. Okay, so there's a couple of things in here that I'm seeing. One is the challenge with task initiation, right? And sort of breaking things down. But then the other thing I'm reading in this is once you get going, you just kind of push through until the point of exhaustion. Um, and so one of the things I want to talk about with that particular issue, because I think most of us can probably relate to this. This is something that I used to do a lot um, until I learned the skill of leaving breadcrumbs. So the idea of leaving breadcrumbs is, all right, so you're working on a project and your experience has been that, oh, I can't stop because if I stop, I have no idea if and or when I'm ever going to continue this project. So you just keep going, keep going, keep going, which, makes sense if you don't have other strategies to help yourself with that. But one of the strategies, this idea of leaving breadcrumbs, is taking a minute. I promise you, it will take you 60 seconds or less to do this. Write down one sentence. What did you just do? What did you just complete? The next sentence. If you were to continue working, what would be the next thing you'd be working on? All right. Then putting a cue for yourself as to, all right, now where did I put this breadcrumb? Right. So I often will use the calendar, and there's a little trick that I use in my calendar. So I use an online calendar like Google Calendar and iCal, where I'll use the notes portion of the calendar. Now, if you notice when you look at your calendar, whether you're looking at the day view or the week view, there's no indication that there's notes in that particular event unless you actually open up that particular event to see the details. So the little nuanced strategy that I use is I will put 2 different emojis in the calendar event. One is the eyes emoji and the other is the pencil emoji. And what that tells my brain is, look, there's notes, right? So that's where I would sort of leave that trail of crumbs around that. Now, if it's a physical project, I might put a sticky note literally right on that physical project that tells me, all right, what did I just do? What am I doing next? I have a list of stuff that I'm trying to do in my basement at home, and it is on a piece of notebook paper, literally with a push pin pinned on the wall in the basement. Right. So it's putting those types of things in the environment and leaving ourselves those notes because hyperfocus can be great, except that it can be exhausting and really like lead to a lot of burnout. So it's hyperfocus is one of those like very sharp double-edged swords, and I just think it's important that we are aware of the downside. I'm not saying to never get into hyperfocus, right, and work till exhaustion, but make sure you're giving yourself that recovery time if that's the path you're choosing to take. Kristen, anything to add to that?
Yes. So the first thing about your note, I wrote down tiny composition for the, and literally those tiny composition books, the, I don't know, 2x3, 3x4.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And because you can tear out what you already done and throw it away and use it at another one. But literally putting those, like what you said, tape, if you're building shelves and you get tired, you get interrupted, you got that little book, you can write down what you just did, what you need, if it's a project. And that way you got little project books with each project, and the book doesn't move around. It stays with the materials. If you are a digital person and that works for you, you could do the same thing in your notes of your phone, or Asana or Evernote or something like that, and have all those, have that one location, central location, because we generally have our phones with us. About that hyper focus piece. So the first thing I wrote was plan your transitions. If you are so exhausted at the end of the day, what that's telling me is you're probably working through some of the brain drain too, which you might as well double or triple that time. If you do not stop working, the first sign that your brain is tired, you are working extra, because it's taking you longer to recall information. It's taking you longer to compose your thoughts or whatever that is. And it's better for you to take 10 minutes and go do something that's fueling instead, or to stop the project altogether, make notes, and then move on to something different. The other thing is I had to learn to get curious about my, what I call on ramps. I kept trying to figure out, why can't I get up? Why can't I get up? Why am I not getting up? My husband pops up out of bed and starts walking around going, "You going to Tai Chi, Kristen? Do you have to get up this morning?" And I was like, oh my God, why does he have to be such a chipper bird? Shut up. And he's really not a chipper person, which is really funny. So I know he's doing it for me, trying to get me out of bed, help me. And I learned, we do time tracking in our program. And it was after my program, and I kept trying to time track. And I started saying, you know what? I'm going to time track how long it takes me from the time my eyes open and then I naturally, get my ass off the bed. And that ranged between 20 minutes and 45. So what did I start doing? I started backing up my alarm, and I wake up earlier and allow myself, because about 45 minutes, I'm jumping out of bed. And I've learned to do some other prompts around that, because I didn't lay there just worrying and letting that anxiety pile up with, God, I'm still laying here. Why can't I get out of bed? Oh my gosh, I've got all this stuff to do. And I was letting anxiety build up to where sometimes it rolled into depression. I didn't get out of bed at all. And so I had to develop the self-awareness around, what does my brain naturally want to do? And then that whole world thing that you say, bend the world to your needs.
Right.
Luckily I work for myself, so I'm able to kind of adjust that. I do work in the evenings, and so, I can have that on-ramp better. The other thing I heard was, I don't know what options to even think of. I read that in your question. Let a notepad contain your options. When we're in the middle of that kind of anxiety, kind of whirlpool, we're in our limbic system in our brain, and we can't go to our executive function and recall. We have trouble with memory recall. We have trouble with making the decision, kind of pulling the trigger. Write some things down that you could start with, and have it in front of you, and just choose from that list right there, wherever that is, a whiteboard, in your phone notes, on a notepad, on your mirror in the bathroom. Let that guide you, and just start one, but don't try to have to do extra work around it during that time.
And I'd like to offer two tools I know I've mentioned here before, but I think they can offer some real help with different components of this. So the getting started part, or not even knowing what the options are, there is an AI tool called Goblin.tools. And one of the, I mean, it's super cool. What it will do is it will actually break down a task for you and give you sort of time estimations around each task. And you can even choose how granular you want it to go, which can be really, really helpful. And the other one is ChatGPT. ChatGPT, especially the newest version, if you use the app for it, where you can talk to it, It has been super helpful. Like I've used it literally when I've been stuck on the couch, and it has literally helped me get off the couch, breaking down the process of just standing up, which is like I've never felt so seen by a machine before, right? So that has been a really, really helpful tool as well. Um, it's these AI tools can really help us in a lot of these processes. If you notice that you're sort of stuck, you can hop in, open up that chat GPT tool, tell it what you're doing, tell it what you're kind of where you're stuck, and see what it says. Talk to it very naturally, like you would talk to a person. A preface prompt you can always give chat GPT is to like act like an ADHD coach or an organizational expert, or something like give it the role you want it to play and then tell it your situation.
For
Kristen?
those for those of us who aren't digital, and like if it's about getting out of bed, I'm not going to open up that thing. I'm not going to have my laptop there. I'm going to have my phone. But two tools. One is one that you said in a podcast years and years ago that did start helping me get out of the bed when I'm stuck is what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it makes everything else easier or unnecessary. And that was throw the covers off of me. Then I'd ask that question again. I go, put one leg on the floor or off the bed. What was the next one? Okay, put the other leg on the floor. And until my ass was off the bed, I kept asking the questions, even if it was put your contacts in, grab your hearing aids, whatever it was, that was fine. And once butt was off the bed, I was like, I did it. And sometimes you don't have to ask that many, you just ask a couple. The other one was, when I get stuck, like if I need to work on something else, but I don't know what to, I'm stuck there. I think one of our alum gave me this idea. They said, do a quick brain dump. Just do a 1 minute brain dump. And man, that was because it really brought to the forefront what was wanting to spit out of my brain. But I shortened it by 1 minute so that the most important things that I thought were most important, and then I got to pick one, and it really sort of helped me hash out, oh, that's what's most important. Okay. So those are two coaching ones that we have used in the past here.
Awesome. I hope that those things were helpful for you. What we're going to do that's helpful for us is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more of your questions. So we will be right back. All right, let me just make a quick marker on my. All right, for those of you who are here live or possibly watching this on YouTube's two quick announcements. So we have our next registration event for our summer coaching groups is this Friday. It's the website coachingrewired.com. Just add your name to the interest list, and we got some pre-registration stuff to do to be able to join us on Friday. But our groups start in early July. And then the other thing that's more right around the corner in 2 days, I am participating and co-hosting with Shimmer, which is another ADHD coaching organization, the Neurodivergent Pride panel. So it is Pride Month, and all are welcome. This is open to the whole public. This is not just an ADHD Rewired event, and I'm excited about this. This is my first event that I am representing both the ADHD and the queer perspective as a bisexual man. So join us.
Is this like a question and answer thing, or is it?
It is a panel. Yep.
Okay.
You bet. Yep. And it's free to register. And if you want to see it, but you can't make it live, just register ahead of time and the recording will be sent to you. Okay. Let's see. Do we have more questions? We do. So let me just transition back here. All right, we are back, and we do have another question, and that question is from Kristen, a different Kristen. All right, and okay, so Kristen asks, I've noticed a pattern of people in my life, from partners to friends to work supervisors, answering my questions by telling me that we've already talked about this and seeming to be frustrated. Well, I kind of felt that in my heart because I could relate to that. I know I sometimes ask for clarification or confirmation that I understand, and sometimes I don't remember I've asked something. I understand why they might feel frustrated. I'm honestly doing the best I can, but it doesn't seem to be enough, and I'm not sure how to improve on this. Any ideas? Oh, Kristen, I feel that. All right. Kristen, do you have a response? I'm gonna gather my thoughts around this for a moment.
Yeah, I do. And I think the answer, or the ideas are going to be among the diverse among the different relationships you're talking about. Um, I think possibly with a boss, one of my best things that I have ever gotten, and this was from kind of from my husband, but because of being an advocate for my daughter who has special needs, was to email after conversation. And I didn't even know I had ADHD back then. And so this has really kind of helped. Is that when I got an assignment or when I was told something important, and it was more than just passing by thing, or if it was a question I gave that I knew was important, I would go back and email and say, okay, we just talked. I want to send to you what I heard. That way they can immediately clarify for you because they will. And it would lessen the frustration and it would reduce your memory loss. It would actually improve that memory recall, and you would have a place to go refer to if a week later when you're working on the thing, you can go, oh yeah, I sent that to my boss. Let me make sure and see what she or he said or they said. And so that's that idea. I think with family.
Hey, Kristen, before you jump into the family, I want to add
Yeah,
something to
go ahead. Yeah.
Because I remember many years ago when I was working in a residential program in this nonprofit, and it was one of these large organizations that we had like way more work to do than there was time in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And if my supervisor would sort of catch me, walking between buildings or just and she would ask me to do something, I knew right there like there was not a chance in hell I'm going to remember what she just said. So I'd always say to her like, can you either email that to me or can I would ask if she's heading back to her office, like, can I follow you back to your office so I can just take some notes so I make sure that I got what you said, because it's important and I don't want to forget. And so you don't even need to necessarily self-disclose that you have ADHD, right? You just sort of prioritize that I do best when I can see what I have to do in writing because I don't want to, maybe I tend to be forgetful. So sort of sharing that. The other piece in dependence on the work setting, I know that there are coming more and more of these AI tools that are like virtual note-taking tools.
Yeah.
And I've even seen, I recently saw a ad pop up on my Facebook feed for a HIPAA compliant note-taking tool that allows you to have it like going during a client session, and the tool, and it's HIPAA compliant, will take the notes for your clinical notes for you, which to me is like kind of mind-blowing. So I would also encourage you to explore like options like that. So that's for sort of work environment. Kristen, what do you have for like family stuff?
Well, as you were saying that, I remembered one other thing about the work environment thing that I think really drew me to doing what I was suggesting is sometimes it became that the other person was in error with this communication. Like, you know how sometimes people transpose their words and they accidentally say not when they don't mean not. But I didn't have any reason to correct that and go, oh, so not, if I didn't say that, they didn't correct it. So when the confusion or miscommunication came up as a problem, because I was the one who was usually messing up or misremembering or forgetting, guess who had to eat that most of the time? And sometimes I would just own it automatically. And it wasn't always my error. So I find it very important because bosses are busy during the day. They might misspeak. And I think it could be very helpful to them too. Plus, we don't all disclose our ADHD. Neither are other people we're working with. So that's one reason I really encourage you to find some sort of method around this idea that you could use.
Kristen,
Go ahead.
Did I ever share with you when you said it, like when you chose the example of the word not?
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you that when in my undergrad program, so I tried to take stats at my university. That didn't go so well. So then I tried to take it at the community college because I just needed a C to get the credit in it. And the professor we had in stats was still learning English and would often confuse the words is and isn't in a stats class, which changes everything. But I'm going to tell you the reason I passed that class. I don't know if I've ever told you the story, was the professor. I don't think this was an accident, but the answer key to the final exam was stapled to the back of everybody's test. And that's how I passed stats. So, yay.
Holy shit. Maybe that person also had ADHD besides English second language.
Oh my God, like, it got to the point where it was so frustrating that it was comical because like
I
no
wonder
one
if it was on purpose.
I don't think I mean so yeah so I mean this was 20 some years ago and when he said that like it immediately brought like that memory back. I'm like, oh my God, that was like a nightmare.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
go to your family situation now.
So yeah, no, I love that. So the family thing, which it caught, at work I get angry. At home I get where I feel like I don't fit in, and I don't mean that in a bad way. If any of my home people are listening to this, because this is with friendships too and stuff. And I have just learned to embrace. For those who know about the ADHD, and sometimes I hear I don't want to hear about ADHD anymore, and I go, well, then you don't want to hear about me. And I try to do that in a kind way because what I'm telling them is if I can say it a different way for you, if ADHD is triggering to you, but it doesn't change that my brain doesn't think the way yours might. And so embracing that and explaining to them, my daughter sometimes will get upset. Something will happen and she'll think I'm not paying attention. But what I've noticed is I was doing something first and she thinks I'm ignoring her. I try to teach my family members to say my name and get my attention before you start saying something, be it important or just important to you, because that is going to help me hear it, because I think I can multitask. My brain thinks it can multitask, and I'm going, Make sure you've got my attention if it's really that kind of important thing. The other thing I ask is if it's something that I have repeatedly forgotten. I don't know. Maybe I've told you when we're going to the party or blah 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 blah. If I am not automatically thinking, "Hey, put it in my phone right now," or put it in my calendar right now, I will stop and go, "Can you help me brainstorm around how I can remember this?" Because I'm asking for their input too, to show them how difficult it is,
Hmm.
to kind of give them that. It's kind of like a rehearsal to me because I'm in theater, but it's kind of like a rehearsal around. I want them to experience and watch me go through this and how hard it is, instead of just going, okay, yeah, it's really important. Because a lot of times they may have interrupted me with those important things. And so if I'm still trying to keep this, I need them to help me with a brainstorm of ideas. I don't care if it's just as simple as, well, hey, let me write it down for you, because sometimes that's what cues in, because I can't just tell them, send it to me in a text. They get irritated by that. They're just like us. They don't want to be told what to do. So if I ask for their input on brainstorming, they come up with an idea, and usually it's something that helps better serve my brain, and they get into a habit too.
The other sort of perspective on this all is also looking at like encoding, right? Because it's if we don't encode it initially, we're not going to remember it ever, right?
Right.
So like looking at things like sleep, if your sleep is like regularly, like if you're running a big sleep deficit, um, remembering things is going to be super hard, right? The other thing is, how are you going between tasks? Are you like like wrapping up a task and jumping right into the next, or are you having like even if it's just like a momentary lull of like ending a task, taking even just a minute to just like sit and just breathe or stare at the wall? I think that those moments of allowing your mind to rest and wander a little bit really helps sort of the consolidation of what you just did, which will help later on recall from memory. I think when we jump from one thing to the next without some kind of break, it all becomes this mushy blur of, the day that ends in Y, and we have no idea what just happened. So I did love that question, though. Anything else to add, Kristen, to that?
Well, I typed in the chat, I said, really start to assess where you are in the moment when someone is telling you something that is possibly important. And let them know, hey, I'm not at full attention yet. Give me a minute. That has been, and it's a, it may have been a long learning lesson for me because it took a long time for me to learn how to assess what it was I was forgetting, because I wasn't attentive to it. I didn't realize it was kind of happening. I think it was happening naturally, having taken this program and then continuing to work on things. But my brain finally started to get certain things. Like, if my husband would tell me when the movie is, I would repeatedly, even text, repeat, what time's the movie? When he sent me the ticket, it started encoding for me because then I'd add it to my wallet and I would have looked at it longer. And I'm like, oh, we do family movies a lot. So that's a big deal around here. Yeah. So any way you can help to, really dish them into it, because that's what he's figured out. I'm going to send her the ticket when I got the ticket. She'll know what time. I do have that question from Kendra.
Okay.
I mean, not Kendra. Sorry, Kendra, not you. From Joanne, one of our alums. Would you like that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there a difference in triggers, symptoms, and recovery strategies when the person has ADHD versus neurotypical brain? What are some tools and strategies? Wait, what are some tools and strategies for when dealing with burnout when you have ADHD? Are a difference in triggers, symptoms, and recovery strategies?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah. So right there.
like I have to say the stuff that can trigger us is like a no big deal for lots of neurotypical people. Obviously the symptoms, I think, one of the challenges with sort of the stigma piece of ADHD and why some people don't believe in ADHD is because like we can all experience some of the symptoms of ADHD, whether you have ADHD or not. Right. So it's like, but understanding ADHD as like, oh, this kind of goes with us everywhere we go. And it's and it's a frequent kind of relentless kind of thing versus just a period of stress or a period of lack of sleep or whatever it is. And then like the recovery too, like sometimes we can recover even more quickly and sometimes it takes us even longer.
Eric, I think that's where a lot of the difference. I'll shut off my video. I think that's where a lot of the conflict comes into play. Is that not only is it different things triggering us, it can be the same thing. Think of driving. And my husband could get mad because somebody cut him off and he gives him a face and he goes on about his day. Somebody cuts me off. I'm talking about it 3 hours later. That motherfucker cut me off. I don't know who they thought they were. I live in this neighborhood and they're not supposed to turn into the second lane. Why are they turning into the outside lane and just cutting me off? And I am still going. And it's like, so it's the idea that they can actually experience the trigger and it makes it even harder for them to understand because they're going, well, somebody did that to me, but I'm not thinking about it, 3 hours later, so they feel like they experience us, yet we're wrong. Not necessarily wrong, but they're confused by it even more. And so I think there's that level of it too. And so that recognition, I think that self-awareness is the big first key, is identifying, oh, wait, I just got cut off. I know how I am when I get cut off. What can I think about instead? So finding those, maybe I've got pops in my car. I had to put a question because I was having some really bad
pops, Christian.
Oh, I'm sorry. A point of performance reminder. I was just, I don't know what was going on. This is like going back to the very first question of my road rage went way down when I started getting medication. And I learned, oh, road rage is ADHD. Yeah, way down. And it's been down for years. And I had this shift, like a phase, a range of time where it was up and it was ramped, and I'm not sure why. I think it was right after the COVID part where I started getting back into traffic more, and it was freaking me out. I had to put a question in the car that said something. I think I had two questions. Said something like, is this really personal? Like for people who did stuff like that, or even red lights happening to me and I'm running late. I'm like, I get, what's always red on me? And then I would look at that question and go, is that really personal? So that was one of them. I think the other one, was something like, is it worth your energy, or something to that effect. So it was questions not telling me what to do. It was my voice asking me a question, going, that way I could choose to be angry if I wanted to. But it reduced a lot of it. And it finally, went out of the phase. It may have had too much going on at work or something like that. I don't know. Probably healing my knee. That may have been part of it, because it was around that time that I was back driving and stuff. So, yeah, I definitely think that the triggers can be different, but they can also be the same, but just more intense for us. And then she did ask that question around burnout. What are some recovery strategies around burnout? Sometimes we don't have much of a choice around burnout at work. And
Yeah.
so, and I think that's maybe something she was experiencing. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn there.
Yeah, and I can't remember the episode number offhand, but I did a episode not that long ago specifically on burnout. So I would encourage you to check that out. Just go to the website and type in burnout, and it was probably within the last 15 to 20 episodes. I think the guy that interviewed his name was Nate. That's all I remember.
Oh, that was just a month or two ago.
Maybe it's she
Oh, because
time.
I heard a lot about it. It had a lot of positive talk, and chatter.
Oop, your internet is eating your audio again. All right. So, but yeah, I mean,
Wasn't he really funny?
kinda. But I wanted to add one thing too, in different circles of ADHD online, there's different discussions around this, but understanding ADHD is a sort of self-regulation, right? So we're going to get triggered by stuff that doesn't trigger other people. And we're going to hold on to things, sometimes longer than others. And sometimes we're going to let things go faster than others, right? And I experience both of those things. Sometimes I hold on and sometimes I move on real quickly. And it just kind of depends. And I think the most important thing we do is just have that self-compassion as we are moving through this. Just kind of know thyself. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things that we do is we are trying to navigate, having a neurodivergent brain. Is we got to just continue to improve our understanding of that relationship that we have with our brain. Kristen?
This goes right along with what you were saying, but it's a question that has always stuck with me that you share, and you shared so much. It's, what's the story inside your head, or what's the story you're telling yourself? That may refer more back to the triggering question. But I think it can probably refer to the burnout, because if we are overworked one day, then we are saying, God, I'm so burned out. Is that a story you're telling yourself because you're afraid of getting burned out because you had a really hard day? Or are you truly having a really hard day? Or is the story in your head that you're not making, you think you're not, you think you don't have time for refueling type activities, self-care, self-love, but maybe that's the story in your head. Maybe if you sat down and thought about it, you do have time.
It's interesting, Kristen. I sometimes think of burnout as more of like that longer term sort of brain exhaustion, where I think of like a hard day or my brain is just like done. Like I sometimes feel like I'll say my brain is fried, and I feel like my brain is mush. Which is, for me, the language that I use, it feels different than burnout. Burnout is a prolonged period.
I agree with you. That's why I said remind yourself to ask yourself the question, what's the story inside my head? Because if we are saying we're burnt out, we might remember the bias to the now. We might be only reflecting on one or two hard days and calling it burnout when that's not what it is. And we sort of self-sabotage with that sometimes. So it's that whole reframe idea.
And for listeners, bias to the now is this tendency that we tend to have where we overgeneralize and over-apply however we are feeling right now. We tend to think that's how we've always been feeling, and that's how we're always going to be feeling. And the important thing to understand is that whether it's a negative feeling or a positive feeling, neither is true. It's just now. It's whatever we're feeling now. It just tends to feel like this is, where we've been and where we are going. Okay. We have one more question here, and then I actually want to share a quick strategy that I've been doing this ADHD strategy stuff for a long, long time. So I get excited when I stumble upon something new, which I just had. And I just recently shared this with our alumni during our session, but I want to share this here as well. Because I don't know, it's not even like a big deal strategy, but it's like been really effective. So I'm excited to share that. Before that, though, let's answer this question that's actually in the chat. Um, let's see. The question is, I've always had overstimulation issues with sound, but recently noticed that I also have other sensory sensitivities. For example, I don't snuggle, I'm not a hugger, and I'm very particular about clothing material. I have a family member who needs sensory input to soothe. What can I do to meet in the middle? The mismatch. I wish that like on all like the dating apps that they would have like not just like the personality compatibility, but like sensory compatibility. Because like that is like when you have a mismatch in sensory compatibility, like that can be a challenge. I know I've talked about this on the show before about like some of the mismatches between my son and I, right? And our sensory sensitivities. He is a sensory seeker, and part of how he does that is through nonstop talking. And I get very overstimulated auditorily, and it can be a lot sometimes. And so we do have conversations about it because I think you know, the one thing we can do, even if we can never sort of get in sync with our sensory sensitivities with somebody that we're with, is not add to shame, right? And by really talking about like, my difficulty with this experience is a me thing, right? So I need to go do this, so I can, self-regulate, right? Not saying, would you just stop already? I can't take it, like, because then it's like it becomes shaming, right? And so, because owning what it is, like I remember when I when I was married, my like I love the feeling of wind, like it's what to me it's one of like the like my sensory system just loves it. Like I love being on my motorcycle. I love having, if I'm in my car and it's a nice day, having all the windows fully open, sunroof open. Like I love that. Like where and I've been with other people too who don't like that. And so that's a little bit of a sensory mismatch. So I think talking about it is the first thing, and then having ongoing conversations. Like one of the things that I'll do sometimes, I'll put on noise canceling headphones, and I'll tell my son, I'll be like, you can keep talking, but I'm gonna put these noise canceling headphones on, and I'm probably not gonna really hear what you're saying. Um, and sometimes he's fine. He just wants to monologue about something that he wants to talk about. And it works, and we talk about it. We sort of negotiate sort of that interaction. But yeah, I think that sensory needs and understanding that is such an important and thing to explore. And at least it gives you a starting point for like understanding. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I think sensory needs are a big deal. Kristen, any additional thoughts of that?
So I work with many ages of kids and adolescents on the spectrum. And I have someone right now who has a younger sibling who, yes, wants hugs and does them unexpectedly. So one of the things we talked about was, again, having conversation and having practice times where they, my client is the one who gets to initiate them, because the sibling will accept it no matter what. So it's helping the sibling, kind of what I just said earlier about seeing the people seeing me in my moment of trying to figure something out or remember something, or the struggle to how can I do this better. It's that idea. So this client will initiate it and go, I need to practice hug. And because a lot of times it's more about the expectation of the input coming. And I don't know if that's the same for you, but maybe trying to figure that out too, that piece. That demand piece, is it because you're getting interrupted when it's in need? Um, so, teaching the other person some scripting around it of going, I'm really, really sad. And I think that's important for the other person anyway. We all have a certain circumference or radius or whatever of our boundary, our self circle. And at different times, it expands and it shrinks. And I think it shrinks more when we're ready for all of that. Like, I don't always like to cry when I'm going to a movie. I know I'm going to get to cry. I like to cry, and I'm excited about it. But in general, I don't like to cry because I'm afraid it'll turn into not stopping
Mm.
um, for whatever reason. Yeah, so I think that I love that you were talking about y'all negotiate. You know, so having that conversation around that, because it is still a form of an inability. I don't want to say disability, a different ability. And we wouldn't tell a person in a wheelchair if they couldn't get through a pathway, well, you're just going to have to stay there. You're just going to have to deal with it. You can't come to the party because you can't get through the door. They wouldn't do that. They would help manage this and navigate it. And so, but you have to open that conversation for the other person to be aware of the need, um, and brainstorm together around it. I think is really important.
Yeah, and the other piece that, at least with my son and I, we also include lots of conversations around consent, and asking permission to give a hug. Because my son is definitely a hugger, and I usually love his hugs, right? And sometimes I don't want him to touch me, right? I'm just like, "Ugh, I just can't, right?" And he knows it's not a personal thing. We have lots of conversations about it, but he's getting so much better now about, like, I mean, my son used to like come up behind me if I'm sitting on the couch and just like lick my forehead, like top of my head. And I'm just like, which it, to me is like a sensory assault. And I'm just like, oh my God. Right. So it's like having those conversations, trying to normalize it. But with this particular family member, some strategies, if this person needs this sort of input, if you have a type of couch where the cushions can kind of come off, so wedging yourself, that person can wedge themselves in the couch cushions. Like my son will actually sometimes have me wrap him up in a blanket, like really tight, and lay on him. Like he wants that input. Um, and so there's lots of different ways to get input like that. There's compression shirts and clothing that can also be helpful for that person that really needs that kind of input.
Weighted blankets.
Yeah, weighted
I
blankets, even weightlifting. Weightlifting could be an excellent thing for that person that needs that heavy input. Um, I recently hung a pull-up bar in my kitchen. Because I think it just kind of helps to release some of that like built up like pressure. And it's a convenient place to, build some muscle.
wonder too if so. This is so funny because it's on my husband's end. I love to come up and hug my husband, and I have to undo the video to show you what he used to do. And it's because he is not much of a toucher or hugger, but he didn't really know what I wanted out of a hug, and he would do this to me when I'd come up to him when he'd walk in from the office. He'd go to
The,
me.
the,
He's
the
patting me, and I go,
back gesture.
yes, and I'm like, dude, and I would take his arm and I'd go, I want a squeeze. And I would tell him. And then once I got the quick squeeze, I'd back off. But he was doing that because he was like, how long is this going to last? But I know how much he loves me. It wasn't anything. It was just, I don't need it right this. But I also started, gauging when was a good time to go in and get the hug, too. So, having those conversations, and maybe that's a piece for you, is you're not sure how to do the thing of comfort, and asking that question of what they need could be helpful to you too.
Yeah. And these are important conversations. And I think these are also conversations that would, need to be ongoing, because sometimes our sensory needs also change over time. Right. Um, okay. So that's the last question that we're gonna respond to. And I wanted to share a strategy that I've just recently stumbled upon. So um my I'm dating someone new. We've been together for just a little over 2 months. And one of the things that both of us kind of struggle with is the one more thing itis at night. And so, like, we want to be able to say goodnight to each other and be able to have, whatever the time of the conversation is, we want to be able to cut it off at that certain time. So, and what was happening is, we say, all right, we got to be off the phone by 10:30, and now it's 11:15. And I was getting frustrated. I think she was getting frustrated. It might have been more of me getting frustrated. But so one of the things I suggested is, okay, so how about we set a timer on the phone, and we were on FaceTime, and I am not stopping the timer. Like when the timer starts going off, like if we need to finish what we're saying, we can finish what we're saying, but we have to say it through the sort of disruption of the timer. And it's this kind of little thing, but it's been working. It's been working really, really well. So it kind of allows us to say, okay, we've predetermined this as a strategy, because we don't want to then start like resenting the saying the quick 5 minutes say goodnight to each other, or avoiding it because we've learned that, yeah, 5 minutes my ass, it's never 5 minutes, right? We want to be able to honor that. And so just this simple, like we're on our phones, or I set the timer on FaceTime, the timer goes off. And if we're finishing a conversation, we are doing it while the timer is going off. And it's like, it's just the right level of annoying to really work. So it's just a strategy I wanted to share. And I want to encourage you to use it if that works for you.
I have a song that's one more thingitis. Would you like me to sing it real quick?
You know I would.
Okay, so mine is not about the sharing, sharing, sharing. Mine's about the trying to get out the door. It goes to the Muppet Show theme. It's time to roll out of my bed, shower, dress, and brush my teeth. Find my keys and take my medicine. It's really time to go. It's time to grab my backpack. It's time to get in the car. It's time to start the engine back out of the drive. But I have one more thingitis. I know I can get her done and still be there on time. The lies we tell ourselves. I really ought to know. I'm gonna miss the show. Why can't I stop and go? It's the most frustrational, procrastinational, aggravational, ADHD. Why can't I ever just get on the road? That went high because I started high.
That was awesome. And I think that's a great place to end. So thank you, Kristen. And if you want to hear more jingles, how's the podcast going? Are we releasing anything?
We've had a slight hiatus with all this busyness, but I'm coming back.
Okay.
But I am coming back. Yeah, I've been writing songs and stuff. So
the ADHD Creatives podcast with Kristen Martz. So we will be returning into that. And I'm sorry if you're hearing a dog barking. It's right outside this window. All right.
And I'm very excited because when I come back, there's an interview with one of the people I met at the ADHD, the TAD conference last year. And it's amazing. So real excited about that.
Well, I want to thank everyone who is here live and asked questions. Kristen, thank you also for being here. And we will catch you back here next month. And again, just a quick reminder about our coaching groups. And on this Thursday, we have our Neurodivergent Pride panel that I am proudly a part of. So happy Pride Month, everyone. And